Okay, today I'm going to be teaching you about the algebraic properties. And when I first was teaching, I never really understood why these were so important. But the longer I've taught, the more I've realized that these are so pivotal to everything that we do in mathematics. In a couple lessons from now, when I start teaching you how to do actual algebra, everything that we do goes back to these properties in some way, shape, or form. So these properties are very important. And these properties all have names, but you probably know most of these because most of these are common sense. So let me give you an example. If I said 1 plus 2 is the same as what? Well, obviously 1 plus 2 is equal to 2 plus 1. Well, guess what that's called? That's called the commutative property. So the commutative property of addition is if I have a plus b, it's the same as b plus a. Okay? For example, 1 plus 2 is the same as 2 plus 1. That's the commutative property of addition. You could do some other things with it. You could do, let's say, I'll get back to that in a minute. Let's do multiplication. Now, if the commutative property of addition is a plus b is equal to b plus a, then the commutative property of multiplication is something like this. If 1 times 2 is the same as 2 times 1. 1 times 2, oops, let's write it as variables first. As variables, a times b is the same as b times a. You want to write it going across, not down, so let's fix that real quick. All right. A times b is the same as b times a, or for example, 2 times 3 is the same as 3 times 2. Okay, so commutative property. You can add or multiply two things in any order. The associative property of multiplication. If I had 1 plus 2 plus 3, it's the same as 1 plus 2 plus 3. That's the associative property. What I'm saying is I can add 3 or more things in any order. So what I'm saying here is if I have A plus B in parentheses plus C, it's the same as A plus in parentheses B plus C. Okay? Or with numbers, let's make up one. 2 plus 3 plus 4 is the same as what? Well, 2 plus 3 plus 4. And you've been using the commutative property of addition for most of your life. And I'll give you an example of that. If you were adding 3 plus 4 plus 7, what would you do? Well, most of you would probably add 3 and 7 first to make 10, and then 10 plus 4 is 14. You're using the the associative property, you didn't even know it. All right? The associative property of multiplication is this. If I have A times B times C, it's the same as A times B in parentheses times C. That's the associative property of multiplication. Do it with numbers. 1 times 2 times 3 is the same as 1 times 2 times 3. Okay? Now, those are the two main properties. These are by far the most important ones. Now, you're going to have to stay with me for a few minutes because I'm going to start showing you. If that's all there was to this, this would be easy, but it's actually not that easy most of the time. Just because there's parentheses doesn't necessarily mean it's associative property. And that's what some people do, and they get them wrong. Associative property has to do with changing the order of things. Commutative property has to do with flipping the two things. So let me give you an example here. If I said 3 plus 2 plus 3, let's change that to 4. 2 plus 4. How about that? Okay. So if I had 3 plus 2 plus 4, it's the same as 3 plus 4 plus 2. What I'm going to ask you here is this commutative or is this associative? Well, some people just look and say, oh, there's parentheses, so it's automatically associative, but they're wrong. Because what you have to do is look at what's in the parentheses. Look here. In this parenthesis, a plus b is in parentheses, or in this part of the problem, a plus b is in parentheses. But in this part, b plus c is in parentheses. If the stuff in the parentheses changes, it's associative. If the stuff in the parentheses does not change, it cannot be associative. It has to be something else. So let's look here. Did the stuff in the parentheses change? No, it's 2 and 4, 4 and 2. It's the same numbers. So it can't be associative property. This is actually commutative. Because notice, the 3's here, so it's not changing at all. So you can kind of just ignore the 3. Look at what we're saying. 2 plus 4 is the same as 4 plus 2. Ah, that's commutative. So be careful with that. Just because there's parentheses doesn't make it associative. Look at what's happening in the parentheses. If the stuff in the parentheses changes, then it's associative. Also, check this out. If I had 3 times 2 times 1 is equal to 2 times 1 times 3, well, is that commutative or is that associative? Well, at first glance, you'd see parentheses, so you'd say associative, and you'd be wrong. Because notice, 2 times 1 is 2 times 1. The stuff in the parentheses did not change. What changed? 2 times 1 is a number, so it's 3 times a number is equal to the number times 3. That's also commutative. You got to be careful with these. Just because there's parentheses doesn't automatically make it commutative. All right? And you may want to even write that to yourself. Associative parentheses change. Okay? For commutative, parentheses do not change. Okay? All right, identity property. The identity property is talking about what can you do to a number, what can you add to a number to not change it. So, what can I add to 3 to make it still equal to 3? Well, obviously 0. Yeah? That's the identity property. A number plus 0 is equal to the number. Welcome to first grade. So 3 plus 1, oops, not 3 plus 1, 3 plus 0 3 plus 0 is equal to 3. That is the identity property of addition. So let's talk about some things that may look like identity property that aren't. If I had 3 plus 0 is equal to 0 plus 3, you may see the 0 and think that's identity property, but it's not. Because notice for the identity property, the 0 goes away. 8 plus 0 is equal to A. For this to be identity property, you'd have to have 3 plus 0 is equal to 3. That's identity property. That's commutative property. So be careful with that. Also, we have the identity property of multiplication. So let's try that with multiplication. 3 times what is equal to 3? Oh, 1. And that's what the identity property of multiplication is. A times 1 is equal to A. Identity property of multiplication. Or 2 times 1 is equal to 2. And just like before, if I have 2 times 1 is equal to 1 times 2, that is not identity property. That is commutative property. What would have to happen for it to be identity? The 1 has to go away. Now it's identity property. Hope that makes sense. Then we have one last property called the zero property of multiplication. We don't have a zero property of addition because the zero property of addition is called identity property. So the zero property of multiplication is this one. 3 times 0 is the same as 0. That's the zero property. So we're going to have a times 0 is equal to 0. Or 3 times 0 is equal to 0. All right, so let's quickly summarize and do some examples. Commutative property, you can add or multiply two things in any order. Associative property, you can change the order that you add or multiply in. Make sure if the things in the parentheses change, it's associative. If the parentheses don't change, it's probably commutative. Identity property, a plus 0 is equal to a times 1 is equal to a, and then we have the zero property of multiplication, a times 0 is equal to 0. But let's look at the first one. Example 1. X plus y is equal to y plus x. A plus b is equal to b plus a. That should be easy. That's the commutative property. So I'm just going to write comm of addition because I don't want to write it all out. Commutative property of addition. Let's look at the next one. 3 times 1 times 5 is equal to 1 times 5 plus, times 3. You see parentheses, so at first you're going to say associative, and you get it wrong. Just because there's parentheses doesn't make it associative. What's important here is, did the stuff in the parentheses change? Well, let's look at it. 1 times 5 and 1 times 5, these are the same. The stuff in the parentheses did not change. What I'm basically saying is 3 times a number is equal to the number times 3. That's commutative property. So this is commutative property of multiplication. Now let's look at this one. 1 times 5 and 1 times 3. The stuff in the parentheses changed. That makes it associative property of multiplication. Hope that makes sense. Go down a little bit farther. Let's look at this one. 5 times 3 times 1 is equal to 5 times 3. Well, what happened? The 1 went away. Well, which one of these properties has the 1 going away? Go back up here. Oh, identity property of multiplication has the 1s going away. So that's identity property. I'm just going to put ID property of multiplication. All right. 5 times 0 is equal to 0 times 5. Oh, that's a zero property, right? Oh, you're wrong. That's not zero property. For it to be zero property, the 5 has to go away. For this to be zero property, this 5 would have to go away. If you go back and look at your notes, that's true. And that's not what's happening here. The 5 is not going away. What am I saying? 5 times 0 is equal to 0 times 5. Good old commutative property once again. Okay, just because it has a 0 doesn't make it zero property. And our final one, 0 times 6 plus 5 is equal to 0 times 5 plus 6. Well, the zeros don't go away. That doesn't help me. The zeros are both first. That doesn't help me. The only thing that's changing is the stuff in the parentheses. 6 plus 5 and 5 plus 6. What do? We flip the order of the addition. How many things are we adding? Just 2. We flip the order of adding 2 things. It's commutative property once again. The zeros didn't make a difference. Commutative property of addition. And there you have it, the properties. The only property that is really important that I failed to give you here is the distributive property, and that's actually the next lesson all by itself. All right, good luck with these properties. I hope they're useful.